So after high school, I went to Everett Junior College for a semester. I just didn't know anybody up there, and after I finished the semester, I just didn't want to be in college, so I ended up going back to Shelton. And when I went back to Shelton, I was partying, and there's one friend of mine, Gary Ingebretson, he got in trouble, and back in those days, you had an option. You could, go to jail or join the service. So Gary and I, one night, we decided, hey, before they draft us, let's go. Okay. I think we were drinking at the time. Yeah, let's do this. And so that's how that started. And Gary and I joined together, and we went in together. We were together all the way went to Fort Hood, Texas. We were in an armored division, Patton's division. We built up with a company, the 198th Light Infantry Brigade, to go to Vietnam in '67. We went all the way through the combat training, and just 2 weeks before we shipped out, they disbanded our unit. And so Gary, they kept one guy, and it was Gary. They kept him. So he ended up taking off for Vietnam, and I was stuck there in Texas. Well, in the meantime, I got transferred to Germany. And when I went to Germany, I was in a maintenance battalion, always in a maintenance battalion, because I was parts specialist, ordnance and supply. And one day, a girl I knew in Shelton sent me the clipping where Gary died in Vietnam. Mom, nobody in our family told me. And when I heard that, I got really upset because I was supposed to be there with him. And so that's when they have you can 1049 request assignment, and I requested to go to Vietnam. So I came home in, oh boy.
Did Gary have, would he have a girlfriend or romantic interest?
He had a romantic interest in high school.
And then when he went to Vietnam,
she dumped him, and she could have waited for him to get out of there before breaking up with him. But
and through the years, as kids, we would always go up and visit
his mom. Always.
What's her name?
Margaret
Ingebretson.
Always.
Yeah.
Because I felt sad that he was the only son in the family, and he didn't even have to go. Because sole surviving sons don't have to go. And
so you were in Germany, and then you came back on a 1049 to go to combat in Vietnam.
Yeah.
Maybe you could tell us about your deployment there, arrival, and.
I mean, you're 20 years old. You're scared to death. You get over there. You're sitting on a platform, and they're telling you where you're going. They shout out this part of Vietnam, and there's always some guy that's been there before, and they'd say, oh, that's a bad part. And this was right before the Tet Offensive in '68. And I ended up going to Quinh Nhân. And Quinh Nhân was a transportation place and a lot of equipment there. And I ended up being stationed there for a while. And in the meantime, I got sick. We'd go to town, and they had a fruit cocktail that had, fruit in it and water. And I started not feeling good and lost a whole bunch of weight. I ended up going to the dispensary, and I had hepatitis real bad. And I was medevac to Japan, spent 43 days there.
Wow.
And I'll never forget some of the stuff I've seen in my life. I'll never forget it as long as I live. I was carried on a stretcher all the way there, and I was by this one guy in an airplane to Japan, and I was talking to him, and also there was another guy close to me that had his arms were covered with bags and tied off, and he had sores all over his body, and they didn't know what he had. And so when we get to Japan and they roll us in, I saw him open up a curtain, and they had that gentleman that kid that I was talking to, and just making conversation, and he was split all the way up from his groin to his chest. And I know he died, but so anyway, ended up there for 43 days, and then it's so bad that before we left, they locked us in the barracks because they didn't want us to go AWOL. And because a lot of guys didn't want to go back, and there was a particular guy that when you have hepatitis, you're not supposed to get physical. And this guy went to the gym and worked out, almost killed himself. I mean, he got a pass back home, but so when I got back to Vietnam, I wasn't there very long, and I had to escort some NCR guys to Saigon. And when I got to Saigon, these guys talked me into staying a while, and I didn't get back to my base real prompt. And meanwhile, on my flight back to Quin Yon, I run into two guys from Shelton, my hometown, and I was catching a ride up to Quin Yon from Saigon, and Bob Bryant and Gary Marshall, and there was a lot of guys from a little logging town that were in that war. So when I got back, they kind of got mad at me, and they shipped me out to Sherang Valley. So I was not anywhere over there. You're in danger. I wasn't an infantryman, so I wasn't out, but we all got shot at occasionally. And out in the valley, every night we pulled guard duty, and the helicopters would hit the hills, and every other round was a tracer, or every seventh round. So it was just a red line where because they had to protect all the parts and stuff for tanks and trucks and armament and all that stuff. So then in Saigon, the Viet Cong said they couldn't be killed. So in Saigon, they would pile the bodies in a traffic circle just to show people that they can be killed. So it was nonsense, the whole thing.
Yeah, I know the documentary that Gabe watched details a lot of stuff that they would fight so hard to get this area and then leave, and it was a total waste of time, or it was a total waste of human life.
Yeah.
What was it like for you to come back home? What was it like to get on the plane and leave that place?
It was, I can't describe it. But you got to understand, Nixon withdrew 50,000 troops. Well, all that meant was people that had very little time left, short timer you're called, he let them out early. I think I had 2 weeks left in country, so that meant that all these people were trying to get home. It took me 6 days to get out of Vietnam, to get to Oakland, to get processed out. I don't think I slept the entire time.
Wow.
But then the reception home wasn't too good. We just kind of snuck back into society, and this grocery store I used to work at when I was a kid, I'd go up to people to say hi to them, and and after I got out, it was the time of the My Lai massacre when Lieutenant Calley went in there and they killed a bunch of civilians, and so people just looked at us like it wasn't good. And that's one of the reasons that I decided then I needed to get out of Shelton and move on and find another place.
This was in Sherang Valley?
Yeah, we took a round one day. And this is at night. I mean, there's hardly any lights, and it was awful country, but beautiful country as well. This is where we kept all our parts. This is out in the valley. There wasn't much out there. And this is a warehouse that I was in charge of. And this gal here, I forget her name, but she's the one that cleaned up around there. That was her job. And here's a photo from our barracks.
Back to Oakland?
Yeah, that's when I got out. That was my September 4th, 1969 is when I got out.
Is that the Summer of Love?
No, as far as I was concerned.
Where was this at?
At our, where we're at, our base.